waiting for Zoom here to say it's recording. All right, here we go. Hi, everybody. This is Jose Gomez here with CEO of 3D Solar, David Ringo. David, how are you today?
I'm fantastic. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. Well, today I'm really excited. We're going to talk a little bit about the process of solar panel installation, the process of getting your panels installed, but also what to expect during the time that the installation is happening. As a homeowner myself, this is a little bit of a mysterious process to me. We've been talking about the idea of solar panels. We talk about solar energy. We talk about, a lot of the questions that folks have, but this is where it really gets to the nitty gritty. What actually happens once I say yes? Once I say, I'm ready, let's go. My financing paper's gone through. I mean, all this has happened. What's the process once I say yes?
That's a great question. And, there's a lot of people out there that get very frustrated in this process because it takes a while. And I think you raise a very interesting question, because most people are, like you said, they get all this, the paperwork's done. We signed it. Let's just say it's a Saturday. So it's great. Everything's fantastic. And then I don't hear from the solar company for a while. What are they up to? What are they doing? Typically, we have, and most companies have somebody, once the sale is done, they have somebody come out and actually physically get on the roof, check the roof out, make sure things fit as designed by the sales rep. So they'll come out and look at the electrical panel and see where the electric's going to go, because you don't want to get to the house with it and have a surprise on installation day. So typically, I would say probably 90% of the time you're going to have that happen. There are some people that do the site survey at sale, but it's so difficult because you at that point in time, you need to have a crazy combination of skills between sales and technical, and that's sometimes hard to find in the same person they're both really good. Not saying it doesn't happen, but typically what you're seeing is a sales rep in a home closing out the deal, helping get that thing taken care of, and they're often doing they're going to the next client. So what we do is we have somebody come out and check out the house, make sure that the roof is adequate space and that it's in good enough condition to install on. There's homes that we've turned away because the roof hasn't been good enough condition. We don't want to put a system on a roof and then have you take the system down in a year to put a new roof up. That just doesn't make any financial sense. You're just going to be spending too much money on your ROI for the first 10 years, Right. So we have them come out, check out the house, take pictures, look in the attic, see how we're going to run the wiring, check out the electrical panel, all that kind of stuff. So when we get all that data, we may have to revise the drawing that the sales rep had shown. And if so, what we'll do, if it's drastically different or if it's going to have a different production, we go back to the homeowner and say, Jose, we were going to install 40 panels on this side of the roof, but this tree is too shaded. We're going to put them on the other side. Are you okay with them on that side? Because some people are very particular about where they want their modules. So there's every step of the way, there's this small little detail that you wouldn't think is a big deal. But if we're moving a couple modules here and there, that's fine. But if you start moving the bulk of the modules because it's better production on the other side, sometimes the homeowners are like, I'm not doing this. So once we do that, we have.
How much time has gone by? I don't want to interrupt you, but how much time usually has gone by with all of that?
Well, what happens is when we complete all the paperwork and everything in the home with the sales rep, you're probably talking 4 business days before we can get somebody out there to look at the house. And then they come back that day or the next morning and they're downloading all the data, pictures and the layout and verifying and all that stuff. Internally, we process through that in about a day, maybe 2 days. And then engineering, we're getting on board with engineering. And then from there, so we typically try to submit for a permit in 7 days, 7 business days. So we're out there 3 or 4 days, to do the site survey. We actually start putting the process together for the engineering package, if you will. Present it to the engineering comes back with drawings, we approve it or disapprove it and say, listen, we wanted this, it's not what happened here, or we just say that we like that drawing. if they do everything correctly, it can be a very quick process. And then the next day you can literally be submitting for permit. So our goal, like I said, is probably 6 to 7 days before we're submitting for permit, which is pretty quick turnaround. So after that, that's probably the process that takes the longest, is permitting. And in this world that we live in now, Jose, it's so crazy because there's some places that have gone strictly online, which is great for us because we're not driving around dropping off permits and delivering paperwork and packages and all that stuff from a 3-hour round trip when you can literally upload it online. So a lot of it has gotten easier for us, but there are some places that you have to drop off the permits. You still have to drive there, drop them off. You can't see anybody. You drop off in a box outside. And again, this is the COVID world we're living in. So we're dropping them off in a box outside, and then they'll call you when they're done. Some of them have a quarantine for 72 hours before they'll look at the paperwork because they know that COVID lasts on paper for 72 hours. So some of them quarantine the product or the paper for 72 hours before they look at it, and then they're digging into it. And what's crazy to me is how vast the variation of timing is for each AHJ, which is the authority, for the permitting. So you'll have some places it'll turn around in a day, some places turn around in 4 to 6 weeks. So when I'm in somebody's house, they're asking how long it's going to take. I really struggle answering that question because I'm trying to figure out, what county am I in? Okay, so we're in this county. It's probably going to be about 6 weeks before we can get out here to install. So the different permitting and different building departments take just vastly different times to do that. So for example, if somebody's in Tampa or Hillsborough, that's probably the quickest turnaround we see anywhere in the state. It is very, very quick turnaround. We've sold a job on a Thursday and installed on the next Friday. So 8 business days we were installing. That's 6 business days, sorry. And 8 actual days, 6 business days we're installing. That's not common. And I don't like telling people that because they expect that then. Right. But if you're in Pinellas County, it could take 4 weeks. It could take quite a while. And then Pinellas has so many different building departments. You've got Indian Rocks Beach, you got St. Pete, you got St. Pete Beach, you've got, Tarpon has their own. There's so many of them in Pinellas, and they're all different. And all of them have slightly different requirements on their permitting. So it doesn't really matter to us because we do it all the same, and they're all fine, but it just takes such different timing between just those 2 counties that are touching each other. You know what I mean? They're the prominent counties in the Bay Area, as you know. So Hillsborough is extremely fast. City of Tampa is the only other place in Hillsborough County that you can get a permit, and it's very fast as well. But again, you come across that bridge in Pinellas County, and it's very, very different. And depending on where you're at, it can take a very long time. So that part is what takes a good amount of time.
Now, David, how do homeowners associations factor into that too? Do you typically see that you have to deal with that?
That's a great question, and one that I totally overlooked. So that's a whole different process that really doesn't include in the permitting process. But what we do is, if we do have somebody in an HOA that requires that they get approval, that's a different process that we start at the same time. So as we get the paperwork back from the pre-site or the site survey, we call it, it'll have HOA or it'll have, it won't, one or the other. If it doesn't have an HOA, obviously we have no issues. If it has an HOA, we're going to contact that board and request, permission to install. Now that in itself opens a whole can of worms, because there's a law in Florida. You simply cannot stop the installation of solar panels. But what we try and do is make certain that we work with that HOA to do the best we can to accommodate where they would like the panels. If we can move them from one side of the house to the other without losing much production, we'll do so. we try to work with HOAs and make it to where the homeowner isn't a target in the future. And I'm not saying that politics happen in HOA, but I don't want to put modules where the HOA doesn't want them, and then every time the grass is an inch too tall in their yard, they're getting a fine, or the mailbox needs painted, or we try not to be anything like that. But that in itself now is, again, it's another interesting comment or a whole topic because of the COVID. Some of the meetings are delayed, or some of them are online, or they're having less meetings. But that's a process. Like I said, we start after the site survey. That typically doesn't take as long as the permitting, but it runs in parallel with the permitting process. So we'll get the HOA approval. They may come back and request that we move some modules. But we've been doing this long enough that if we're going to install on a certain roof line, we know the verbiage to put in there to request that we're going to be able to put on that roof line. We know the law very well. We don't manipulate it to where we're trying to get one up on the HOA. We're just trying to make certain that it's the least expense and the best production that we can for the homeowner. And if we can prove that, then there's nothing the HOA is going to say. But that's a great question. I totally forgot about the HOA during that whole process. But we've dealt with many of them. I can't think of one that is denied us because they just simply cannot. We've worked with a couple of them that we've moved modules from one side to the other, but other than that, we've not had any questions or problems with the HOA. But that's a great question. Usually, now again, if that was in Hillsborough County, then the HOA, we would be waiting on the HOA to install typically, because we can get a permit in 5 days in Hillsborough County, 6 days sometimes. But in Pinellas, you're very rarely waiting on the HOA. You usually have that approval before you have the permit. So it's a very interesting question.
I think that's pretty interesting. 1 day to 6 weeks. It could be any time in between. So that's pretty interesting. And how COVID has shaped that process too is pretty interesting too.
It really has. We used to have, that's changed the look of our process as well. We used to have somebody that was dedicated just to come in and literally pick up permits, get in a car and drive around, drop off, pick up all day long. That's what this individual did. Didn't matter if it was north, south, wherever it was, they were just driving around getting permits.
Right.
And when COVID happened, none of the building departments were allowing anybody in the building. So it all went online. So that individual, any permit running company is looking different, because they have actually permit companies out there. They look a lot different now than they did, because they used to have cars going everywhere. Now they're probably sitting in an office, sending things electronically now. So it looks totally different. Like I said, there's some places that you literally drop off and you put your permit under a rock in a cardboard box, and they'll tell you when it's done, and you go pick it out of a box, and there's 10 other permits in there. You grab yours and you go. Everything's paid online. It used to be, which I know this sounds crazy. I think COVID, I hate the fact that we have a virus in the country. I don't want to downplay that. It is a dangerous virus. It has killed many people. It has affected many lives. I'm not going to deny that. But what I think it has done, it has made us realize how we can streamline certain things and how some steps are unnecessary. And I wish it wasn't a virus that made us realize that. But I do believe that the permitting process is streamlined online much better. And many contractors have been asking for that for years. And now it's actually starting to happen, which I think is great. But again, I don't like the reason that we're doing the online. It's not, I obviously don't like that, but it's great that we're doing some of these online. It's great that some of them are expedited in a sense that, they have it electronically. They don't have to absorb it through paper and start looking through it. They can just digitally look at it. They can probably work from home and do this. There's so many benefits to the way their process is now. But
I was going to ask that how permanently do you think some of these things have changed even after COVID? Do you think that they'll stay just as streamlined, and maybe some folks have figured out that we could do it this way and it's better?
I really hope so, Jose. I hope so on many things. I think there's a lot of things we've seen in our society that has changed. I I believe that the state of Florida needs a better permitting process. I think that online is great, and I wish there was a standard form that we could put in all of the building departments. There's just not. Everybody's got their separate requirements, and everybody's got a separate form, and you have to do everything to their standards, which I understand. But I get frustrated that there's not even a little bit more streamlined in the applications and so on. So that part frustrates me. But I will say this: a lot of contractors get frustrated about going through this process, and if the process of getting the permit, and and a lot of people overlook why they're getting a permit, and they think it's a costly cash grab, and it's frustrating, and it's the government trying to get their hands on some money. I don't look at it that way. I look at it in the hopes that the county's doing what they're supposed to be doing, because really why you're getting a permit and why you're getting an inspection afterwards, and we have to get to that here in a second, but the reason they're doing that is to protect a homeowner. There's not a homeowner alive. There's very few alive that understand if the solar system is installed correctly. Yeah. So what you need is an authoritative figure or entity to come by and inspect and to approve drawings beforehand and inspect afterwards. And that's what the permitting process is. And that's why the contractors have to do all this. I mean, this is essentially protecting the homeowner. That's what the permitting process is. Some homeowners get very upset about the process. Many contractors are furious about the permitting process, but it's truly to protect the homeowner, because they don't, I mean, how do people know if the solar's installed right? Hey, it looks good, but is it installed right? Yes,
especially when the technology feels like voodoo. So, it's like, you don't know what's going on. You don't know if something is devaluing my home because it was installed incorrectly, or I've got to rip everything down now and replace a roof because it was all done the wrong way.
Absolutely. I've seen every extreme you can imagine on inspections, and I won't go into where or when or whatever, but I can remember doing installs in the past where I was on site to make sure that the inspection, because it was early in our journey, and it was years and years ago. Probably it was the first installation in this town, and the inspector got on the roof and was looking at it and literally looked at our install, crossed his arms about 15 feet away and says, "Man, that looks great." And he started coming down the ladder. I'm like, "What are you doing?" I said, you're not gonna look at anything else while you're up here." He just looked at it and thought the appearance looked good, so it must be installed well. Ugh. So I spent time explaining to him, how the grounding works, how the panels and the inverters interact, and how they should be attached to the roof and attached to the rail, and how the grounding works per rail and so on. But they years ago didn't know how to inspect anything. And the way that, and the speed in which solar is growing in Florida, you still have inspectors that don't know really what they're looking at, but you do have some that are getting very, very good at it too. So it's a combination. You never know what you're going to get. Yeah. But I guess to continue on in the process.
Yeah. After 1 to 1.5 months, what goes on next?
So let's say we get the permit approved, and we go pick up the permit, and now it's let's call you, Jose. We're going to come out and put a system on your house. So we schedule a day that you're going to be home. Preferably somebody at the house needs to be there, because we're going to need access to the garage and so on, and we want somebody to be there. So we'll schedule it with you. Come out, do the installation. Typically it's a 1-day install, unless it's a really large system. It might be a 2 or 3-day install, or if it's tile, sometimes that extends the install. But we'll go out, do the installation, and then after that, the next day typically is the inspection that we talked about. So they come out, and depending on where you're at as well, you'll have either 1 or 2, sometimes 3 inspectors come out. One inspector will typically look at the electrical, and one inspector will typically look at the building portion of it, which is the attachment and how they built the array. And then, like I said, the electrician is looking from how we did the electrical work downstairs, the grounding, all the way up to the roof and so on. So you have those inspections. Typically they go pretty well. There's some that either don't see what they should on the drawing and see something different. Maybe there's a different wire size used, so they may either fail it or put a pause on the inspection until it's corrected. So red tag is what they call it. If it's failed, then there's a red tag fee associated with it. You have to pay that before you get the next inspection. So once that inspection is completed, and usually they pass in the first, because most installers, you get failed a couple times and you start learning exactly what the inspectors are looking for, even if it's a little bit beyond code, because they can interpret how they want these codes, right? But everything's installed to the NEC code, so it's National Electric Code is what these systems are installed for. So you'll get the inspections done, but once you have the inspections done, after that, what takes even longer sometimes is the interconnection to the utility companies, because you can't use your current meter. So you have a single direction meter at this point. Typically, they have started putting other meters up, newer meters up on homes on the newer construction now that can actually be turned into bidirectional meters. But you need a meter that's going to be able to read the electricity coming into your house, and if you're producing more, it needs to be able to read the power that's going out of your house, so you can get credit for what power you're creating. You don't have that on your home typically. So the problem that we have now is, once the inspection is done, the electrical inspection is done, and all the inspections are done, then we submit, or solar companies submit for the utility to come out and swap out the meter. So sometimes that is not such a quick process. You got to think that, and I'm not saying this to be, I don't know how to say this and be politically correct, but I can't imagine as a utility company, they're excited about coming out and swapping a meter so they don't make money off this home anymore.
Right.
So I can't think that they're waiting for that next request for a meter to be swapped out and they're running out and doing it right away.
Right.
They have a certain amount of time to do so, and typically the utility companies are pretty good about doing it within the time frame. But that's portion of the process that takes a little while too. So that's in addition to the permitting timeline, and then the installation, like I said, can be a one-day install. But once we get that permit, and then we reach out to Jose and say, hey, listen, when are you available? You may not be available for 2 weeks. You may not have a day off for 2 weeks. You may be on vacation. You may be out of town. You may have some other things going on. You may be out, you're ready the next day. So there's that variable of when are you ready once we get the permit. Once the install is done, then the inspection happens. And if the inspections all go well, the next day we're submitting for the interconnection with the utility company. Once that happens, then you can turn the system on. You can't run that system until the interconnection is done. So you've got your sale, your site survey, your engineering, permitting, waiting that time for the permit to get processed and approved, and then scheduling an install, because we don't schedule until we have the permit in hand, because I just don't know when we're going to get that permit. So once we schedule that, if that goes quickly, then great. The install is usually 1 day, inspections a day, and then after that you're scheduling or requesting for the interconnection. This could take 6-8 weeks sometimes by the time you get that meter installed. But one thing we had people call every single day asking about a permit that's in a facility, it's in a place that takes 4 to 6 weeks, and they start after the first week calling every single day. Where's the permit? Where's the permit? Where's the permit? And then at times we'll show them, listen, here, you can check this online. The permit is pending. We don't know anything more than what you can find out online, because you can go on and look at your own residence and type it in and watch the permitting process. And once it's approved, then you'll know. But there's nothing we can do to expedite. I've had people come to me and say, hey, listen, I want to work with you guys, and I can come in there and I'm going to expedite the permitting process. I'll go in there and talk to them. I'm like, you can do that all you want. It doesn't matter what company you are. It doesn't matter who you are, how many systems you've shoved through the permitting. The building departments don't care how big or anything your company is. They're going to do their due diligence, and they're going to put you through the process the same way they do everybody else. There's no priority level of permitting. It just doesn't exist. So that's one thing I think is the biggest misconception, is probably the amount of time it takes for the permitting. And then after that, you still have to wait on the interconnection, which it can take 2 weeks, Jose. It can take a while before that happens.
That's what it sounds like. And There's a few points that you made here. The first one is this idea of having to wait. And sometimes people think that, the permitting departments have their thing on their desk, or actively working on them for 6 weeks. And the reality is it just takes that long to get to you sometimes, because they've got other things in the pipeline. But then sometimes it just takes time for them to review what you've submitted. So you just got to sit and wait. It's just a little bit of sit and wait there. But the other part that I wanted to go back to before we move on was this idea of the bidirectional meter, right? So that's where we finally start getting to, not only, are we putting the panels on our home, and the aesthetic improvements that presents, and obviously the functionality that we're looking for, but that little piece right there, as geeky as it sounds, bidirectional meter is part of the exciting part of getting solar, where not only are you metering energy coming in, but you're also metering it coming out. And so I think that I don't want people to skip over that part. That's one of the exciting pieces.
Oh, it's very exciting. To be honest with you, that's we all kind of hold our breath to see how long it's going to take, because again, that's something that's out of our control. You can't go line the pockets of Duke or TECO or FPL. You're not going to do that and say, hey man, if you could get one of their contractors, maybe you can install my meter before you install it. It just doesn't work that way. So when you have people come out and swapping out a meter, to be honest with you, I think you're absolutely right. That's the icing on the cake. Now you can turn your system on and run it. As soon as they're pulling out of the driveway, go turn that system on and let's do it. And it's very easy to turn our systems on. They're just a breaker here or there, and it's very simple. It's a couple on switches, if you will. You're turning a breaker on and you're going. So it's not really challenging, but sometimes we'll stop by and show the homeowner how to do it, depending on how everything lines up, if we're in the area or whatever. And that's the exciting times. That's when people, then they grab their app and they go in and they start looking at their app and they're all excited and so on. So it's interesting, but you're right. That's the crown jewel, if you will, is the meter being swapped out. And everybody's like, why can't you expedite the meter being swapped out? But the meter, they won't even take the application until the electrical inspection is passed. So you have to go through the installation and the past inspection, or they don't accept your application. So I can't do anything ahead of time. We have everything ready. It's all good to go, but you can't request anything until that inspection is done and passed on the electrical portion of it. So that's the one caveat. Then you're waiting. Once you get the inspection done, that's great. The rest of it is just a waiting game until that meter's swapped out. But you're right. To get that meter to know that you can push, power back on the grid and get, credits for it. And then when you use it at night, you're kind of using your credits that you created during the day. That's a great feeling.
To put pennies back into your pocket, instead of just watching them, just literally pour out as you use energy. I think that's just fascinating. So, once you get that, you power the system on, what happens next?
You're just sitting there saving money at that point.
Nice.
It's game over. You're done. Yeah. So then you start sitting back, you're saving money, and you're just enjoying life. The meter is swapped. You've gotten everything done. All the inspections are done. You just sit there and, depending on, now I say that you're sending it back on the grid, but there are systems, that some people buy for different reasons that are not a full offset. So, there's some people that have no electric bill, and we design systems for that a lot. But there's certain people that have certain restrictions. Maybe they have too much shade. Maybe they don't qualify. They don't want as much. They don't have as much roof space. They're not interested in a full offset. There's so many different, variations that are variables that would keep people from getting a full offset. So I say the bidirectional is critical, and it usually is, because you are pushing money or power back on the grid. But there are people that have a smaller system because of roof space or other restrictions and so on, that may not actually push power back on the grid. They will create a lot of power in the day, and they'll use a lot of it, and they still may have to import some power during those times, but they're still saving a ton of money. You're still creating power in the day, and no matter how much solar you buy, if it's a small amount or a large amount, it's cheaper than buying electric from the grid over the period of time that you have the system. So it just depends. But the having that meter, and then once you turn that on and watching your monitoring, because at that point in time, your monitoring goes live, you can watch your modules producing power and how much you're creating every day. It gets addicting. And for usually about the first 2 weeks, I'd say is about every single day, you're going to have somebody watching it, and hey, listen, they'll text you and say, hey, listen, does this look right? Should I have more today? Should I have less today? This looks really great. You get the excitement for 2 weeks. And then after that, it's kind of, they
That's
stop.
part of your life. Yeah.
They start looking at it more weekly, and then it's more monthly. And then they just notice in their electric bills that they've saved a ton of money, so it kind of goes that's the process usually. But yeah, when they first turn it on, they're holding that app, constantly. It's addicting. But after a while, they do kind of tone it down a little bit, and they start looking at other things, obviously. But it's so fun once you get that meter hooked up and you get your app going with your monitoring. It's so fun. It's addicting to watch how much money you're saving.
So as a homeowner, to kind of summarize it, I decide to say yes. I say yes. I sign the papers. Everything gets submitted, and then I just kind of wait and hang out for a little while. Be patient with the process, patient with permitting, with engineering, making sure that you guys are making sure you're busy, making sure that everything is just where it needs to be, that my HOA is happy, that my county's happy, that I'm going to get the best value, and that I'm not going to devalue my home, my investment here, to make sure my roof is okay, so that it's not going to, fall down on us as we're, putting solar panels up. I'm sure making recommendations that as a homeowner I'll need. But then once all the paperwork comes in, you're able to do that install, swap out the meter. I get an app. I'm super happy, saving money. And that's pretty much it. You're just there to support if anything is needed, correct?
That's correct. That's absolutely the way it goes. Yeah. And there's times that we hear from people in a year, and there's times that we don't hear from them. And, I'll have somebody call me or email us or call the office after 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And they're like, hey, I just was looking at my system and I want to say that, we're still having no electric bill. Or they'll call in and say, hey, listen, my neighbor was asking questions and they're interested in going solar or something like that. But there's sometimes you don't hear from people for years, and it's not that that's a bad thing. It's a great thing because they're not having issues, right? So, once you get them up and running, unless something really goes wrong, there's no interaction required. There's no maintenance on these systems. There's no problems. And then with us, when we install these, all installers anymore have really good equipment. There's very few panels out there that have less than a 25-year warranty on them. Same with the inverters. Most of the inverters have 25-year warranties. We have matched a 25-year roof warranty that we provide. So if there's ever a leak within 25 years, we'll take care of it. Now, the only caveat to that is your shingles have to be within, the lifespan of the manufacturer. I can't put a 25-year warranty on a 50-year-old shingle roof that was guaranteed for 15 years, So,
Yeah.
But other than that, 25-year leak, warranty, you got 25-year warranties on the modules and inverters. There's very little that goes wrong with these. There's no moving parts. You know what I mean? It's not like it has something that, has a lot of moving parts and grinds and does stuff all day. It's just energy flow, just like having a string of electric outlets in your house. There's not something you have to do to replace that. Every once in a while, you're going to want to replace the outlets because you're plugging stuff in and out of them all the time. They might get a little loose or something. You want to upgrade them, but it's not the same with the solar system. There's nothing to wear out or go bad on them. So they last.
Well, being in technology, I think, it's we kind of have this sense of, if we're not hearing from the customer, it just means life is moving, everything's working right. So the best case you can have is that you don't hear a lot from a client, because it means everything you're doing is working. Or everything you've done and put in place is working, and the solution is working. It's when you hear from them that there's usually some sort of an issue and some sort of a thing that you've got to deal with, or maybe they just call them to say hi, but that's usually pretty rare.
That's
Now,
correct.
I do have a question on shingle and tile roofs. So, obviously big difference in cost to the homeowner when they put them on. And is there a different process that I should expect if I do have, my $30,000 to $50,000 tile roof versus, my $10,000 to $15,000 shingle roof?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say, and I'll even add on a little complexity to it. I would add on a metal roof just for kicks. We'll throw
Okay.
that in there, and a rolled roof, a flat roof. I mean, there's so many different roofs that we mount on. So the most common roofs that we install on are the two that you mentioned. So your shingle and your tile roofs. So shingle roofs are very easy to install on. The technology has come so far since we started doing installs. Years ago, there wasn't this technology, and you have people now, and this is the misconception that solar leaks. Solar, once you have solar on your roof, it leaks. It doesn't leak now. In the past, especially with the pool heating, pool heaters were inherently made things leak. On top of your roof, they would leak because it's just PVC piping, and then on top of that, we didn't have really good installation practices and technologies back in the day when we were installing solar pool heaters years and years and years ago. So things have changed a lot. There's great flashing materials we use now that are absolutely amazing. And that's the reason we're doing the 25-year warranty. I wouldn't do that if it wasn't effective.
Yeah.
But the shingles are very easy to install on. And the way we do it, we use a flashing that is, you have to have an inch of standing water on your roof for an extended period of time, and we have to have a couple of rubber gasket failures for there to be water to even have a chance of getting your roof. And it just doesn't happen. You don't have an inch of standing water on your roof on a sloped roof. It never happens. And then
Right.
the failure of these other points are very, very uncommon. So we just don't have leaks on shingle roofs. It just doesn't happen anymore. Tile roofs, there's a couple different ways of doing it. And then on top of that, there's several different tile roofs, right? There's the flat, you see the flat, looks like just a flat concrete roof. There's W tiles, there's S tiles. But there's a couple different ways we can do those. There's sometimes we do a tile replacement where we actually pull a tile out and replace it with a flashing that looks just like the shape of the tile, but it's a galvanized. We've done that, and we also there's other methods too that they'll core a hole through the panel on top, or the tile on top of one of the ridges, and then there's a way of attaching to the roof without having any leaks. So there's a couple different ways with the tile, but you're right. Inherently, there's a lot more work and a lot more labor intensive to do the tile work, or to do the tile installations. Metal roofs typically are probably the fastest to install on because most of them have a way of doing it without doing a lot of penetrations or intrusions on the roof. They're actually a little faster than the shingle. But some of the components to attach to the metal roof are a little expensive, but still it's a little quicker for the labor portion of it. So if you ask me what roof I'd like to install, and listen, give me a metal roof every day of the week. And it's very simple. It's very easy to do. Costs a little bit more for the components, but overall it's a easier, quicker roof to install on. And then you get to the flat, when you have a flat rolled roof or something that's a little bit more of a challenge. We have exceptional products to use for those as well. We've done so many flat roofs in South Tampa. I mean, all over the Tampa Bay market, and we haven't had any leaks on a flat roof, which is, knock on wood, that's a great thing, because that's probably the most challenging. When you start dealing with a flat roof, you ask any roofer what the same, because they're much more about water intrusion than most people are. I mean, we are as well, but that's their life, right?
Right.
So if you ask a roofer, the problematic roofs are the flat roofs. That's just simply put, that's the way it is. So when we have a roof that we're installing on, and you have to penetrate, put holes in that roof, and then you're going to have standing water on that roof, that becomes a real challenge. And we've done pretty well with that. I can't think of one that we've had leak before from a flat roof. But there's products out there for that as well that just make it exceptionally easy. Anybody can do it. Just buy the right material and use the right product, and you're not going to have leaks on that flat roof. So, but again, that's probably the least common roof we install on. It's probably shingle, and then tile, like you said, and then metal, and then the flat roofs. So, but there's great products for all those now. Like I said, there's been, people get frustrated with leaks and stuff in the past, and they just went out and designed a better product and designed a better, fix for it, and they have, and then one company takes it and puts their spin on it, makes it, improves it. So it's gotten better and better and better over the years. It certainly has on all those different roof types.
And then you get to the heart of really what the fear of some homeowners, where it comes from. Where it comes from is the beginning of something, right? So in the beginning of anything, you've got a lot of mistakes. You've got technology that needs to be developed. You've got experience that needs to be gained by the industry, and over time, those things get better and better. And what I hear you saying is that things have gotten a lot better. And they're now at the place where it's really airtight. It's really just like a science. It's a process. There's solutions for everything. And you've got those, obviously you have access to those solutions, no matter what scenario you find yourself in.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I can tell you, as the permitting process is now, I told you it's taken 4 to 6 weeks. We have to have stamped engineering drawings. We have to have 3 copies. You have to have all kinds of supporting documents. It's a bundle of paper. It's an enormous amount of paper to get printed out, and we're putting them in gigantic plastic envelopes so we can hang them outside the house. It is just an enormous amount of paper. Back in the day, now this is a little bit off subject of what you're talking about, but I'll bring it back all together in a minute. But the permitting process, I used to be able to take an 8x11 piece of paper front and back and go get a permit and a walkthrough in certain counties. So I could take a single 8x11, have the materials on the front of what I'm doing, the small electrical drawing, and then on the back, the labels that I'm going to be putting and where I'm going to be putting them, along with the application. And I could go down, fill out the application, and take that drawing that I just created with my license and hand it to somebody and get a permit the same day. And it was a one sheet of 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Now you have tons of repetitive, so papers requesting, your wind loads, your exact drawings, your exact layout, your exact, every documented process along the way. It's insane. It's great for the homeowner. It's great for the industry. It's great for standardization, because as simple as I was doing that, I mean, there's still, obviously you can imagine on a single sheet of paper, but it's the way it was back in the day. So that being said, how primitive that was is how primitive we were installing product on the roofs. I don't know, we always seem to be using flashings when we installed, but there were, outfits out there that were not using the flashings. They would just take an L foot, literally set it on a roof and bolt it right down and put some tar over it, a little glitch over it. Those are the roofs that are leaking. Those are the ones that are having problems. But if you have a flashing underneath of it, the flashing goes up underneath the shingle above. And if there's any leaks, it brings the water right back out on top of the shingle below it. It works exceptionally well. We've installed, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of those things over the years, and we've never had any of those leak. So the technology on both the installations and the primitive way we used to do permitting is no longer there, thankfully, because I am kind of glad to see that got a little bit more stringent to get permits and so on. But both of those processes have changed dramatically over the years. And then on top of that, I can remember, I think you and I have talked this offline. I've talked this to a lot of people, and I think they're tired of hearing Grandpa tell the story. But so I used to, sell for other companies, and I can remember going to homes and we didn't have financing. And solar costs so much money. It was, ridiculous amounts of money. I'd be going somewhere and asking, for $90,000 for a pretty small system, and there was no financing. So I'm sitting here like, do you want to write a check for 50% down?
Right, you're asking for a suitcase full of money.
Yeah, and they're like, how much did you just say? And I'd be like, $90,000 to get rid of your electric bill. And they're like, you've got to be kidding me, right? And so at the time, I was naive enough to think that was because I'm eliminating your electric bill. You wanted me here to do that. Here's the solution. Here's the best price you're going to get. Let's go forward. Right. And what has happened since then is, well, many things have happened. Utility costs have continued to rise. The cost of solar products, everything with the solar systems have declined, over the years drastically. We're probably about a third of the price what I used to sell for years and years ago. And then on top of that, you take the utility cost that's gone up and the solar costs come down. There's an intersection there that looks really appealing. Now it makes sense, right? And then on top of that, instead of having to pay cash, so many finance companies have come out of the woodwork over the years, and there's always a new wave of somebody else that's come along that's got a newer plan with a better rate and a longer term or something better. But we've seen so many advancements in those three things, so it's less cost. It's the financing is so much better now than it ever was. Like I said, I was selling before they had solar financing, and now you've got 15 different companies that specialize in solar financing, and
That's phenomenal.
extended out over 5, 10, 12, 15, 20 years, and you extend a massive investment on your home over 20 years, and your payments are pretty low. So versus me going in and asking for $45,000 down on a small system. So it's come along. So.
So you're not, so when I say yes, we're not driving to the bank together, right? So I can go get the money out.
No.
Okay. I just
That's
get to sign some papers.
Because all these programs now, if you're going to buy a system and you're getting a loan, there's zero money down. Nothing comes out of pocket. And
Wow.
typically they're 45 to 60 days do they start their payments after the installation. So they'll let you get the first savings on they don't want you to have to pay a solar payment and an electric bill in the same first month, because that's just
Right.
not. So they extend that payment out for a little bit, and that lets you get your interconnection done and so on. But no, there's so many great things that are going to solar, compared to what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Well, David, one last question I have for you, which just has to do with, you talked about inspections, you talked about, putting the panels in, we talked about different types of roofs. I know that if I'm at about, that 17, 18 years on my roof age, which I am actually at right now, do you recommend that I actually replace my roof prior to getting my solar panels? Is that something that I do at the same time? What's that process like? As quickly as you could tell me.
Absolutely. Yes, you need to get a new roof before you do solar. If you're going to have an investment that's on your roof that you want it to be there 20 to 25 plus years, you don't want to be putting a new roof on in 3 to 4 years. That doesn't make sense. So
Right.
I would suggest anybody that's got a roof that old is just get a new roof. At the same time, you can roll that into most of the solar loans out there. So you can literally finance your roof and your solar together. And to do so, you can claim tax credits on the roof because you had it installed for the solar to be installed. So it's part of the product that you're installing on. So it's really beneficial to do it at the same time. That way it's you set it, you forget it, you don't have to worry about it for another 15, 20 years, get a good roof, and you're done. If you finance them together, you don't have the cost of the roof, and then on top of that, you can get a tax credit on portions of the roof that you installed on. It's a great thing to do. So yes, if you're 2-3 years away from it, do it now, and get the tax credit on the portion you install on, and finance it all together, and it'll be so much cheaper. I've seen roofs and solar together cost maybe $30-$40 more than what their electric bill is now. So think about, you're getting rid of your electric bill and a brand new roof for like $30 a month.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of different equations that can make that go up or down, right? But I'm just saying ballpark. I've seen that kind of happen before. So
That sounds like a good strategy then.
I would do them both. I would do it and roll them in together on the same loan. If it was me, I would do that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, that was the question that I had there. I mean, I think this has been pretty educational. I think it hopefully, makes folks feel, safe going into the process, feeling like, they know what's going to happen. They know there's a lot of just kind of wait and relax. I say that word relax because it's really what the homeowner needs to do. We don't need to be stressing over, when are you guys coming or when is this going to happen? It's just wait and relax. You're taking care of everything. And really the show time is when you come and do the installation and swap the meter out.
Absolutely. So
that's great. Well, thanks. I really appreciate the answers today once again. David, is there anything else you wanted to say related to this topic before we go?
The only thing I would say is one of the things we have now that helps alleviate the pain, because you bring up that pain of waiting and the angst of not knowing. So we have an app now that we actually run. It's the 3D Solar app that at point of sale, we have people download that app, and during the process, you can get updates within the app, and it'll tell you as things change in our process. Engineering was received, engineering, permit was submitted for, and all that kind of stuff. You get instant notifications on your phone, and not have to wait on somebody to pick up the phone and give you a call and all that. So you can get notifications instantly and let you know along the way, hey, we've received the permit. 3D Solar's received the permit. They'll be calling soon to schedule an install. And all of a sudden you get that, you're having a bad day at work, and all of a sudden you get that and you're like, sweet, I've got an install coming.
Yeah.
This is great. So we've automated a little bit of that process just to help people out. Some people aren't big app fans, but when we start talking to people about the app on this, they're all about it. I haven't had anybody yet that says they don't like the app, but it's a very good way of understanding the process and how fast it's come along to you and what's the next steps are and when they're coming. So we've implemented that, and it seems to work out very well. We like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that does. That just, I don't have to call anybody. I don't have to make any requests. I just got to sit around, wait for my phone to ding. And that's how I know things are moving forward.
There you go. That is.
Even more relaxed now. That's
Exactly.
great.
Exactly. So.
Well, David, I really appreciate all the answers. I hope you have a great day, and hope everybody got some good education, good information that puts you at ease about the process of putting the solar panels in. I encourage you, ask the questions, hop over to 3d.solar to get more answers and ask more questions. And I know David and his staff are fantastic about getting back to you as quickly as possible.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time today.
All right, David, have a great rest of your day.
All right, you do the same. Thanks.
All right, take care.